A couple years ago, I went on a solo trip to the mountains of Colorado. I'd just gone through a really rough breakup, and I needed space. I was 27 at the time, working remotely in tech, and figured a quiet cabin in the middle of nowhere would help clear my head. I wasn't trying to go off the grid completely, just somewhere peaceful, surrounded by trees, some snow on the ground, and no distractions. I booked this Airbnb I found on a forum, not even the main site. It was technically through Airbnb, but listed by this older guy named Carl who apparently didn't trust the algorithm, whatever that meant. His place was cheap, had decent photos, and looked rustic but cozy. One bedroom with stove, little porch that looked out into the forest. It seemed perfect. Carl was weird over messages. Nothing too alarming, just a lot of random advice. He told me to be careful with the wind and don't go outside after 11. I figured he was just being overly cautious, or maybe had a quirky sense of humor. I should have taken that more seriously. The first night was uneventful. Cold, but the stove worked fine. I made some instant noodles, put on a podcast, and passed out by 10. The real weirdness started the next morning. I woke up to the front door cracked open. I know I locked it because I remember fumbling with the weird old school latch before going to bed. But now it was open a few inches, like someone pushed it in but didn't step inside. I chalked it up to maybe not closing it tight enough, even though that didn't really make sense. Later that day, I went for a short hike nearby. When I came back, there was a dead rabbit on the porch. It had no visible wounds. It wasn't mangled or eaten, just laying there, like someone placed it there. That was enough to freak me out a little. I messaged Carl, asking if maybe there were local predators or something, and he just replied, "Stay indoors tonight. Don't open the door for anyone. I mean it." That night, the wind picked up. I could hear it pushing through the trees, loud and sharp, like someone whistling right outside the windows. Around midnight, I was half asleep when I heard knocking. Slow, deliberate on the front door. I froze. I didn't move. The knocking happened again, then stopped. Then came a scratching sound. Not like an animal. It was too rhythmic, too steady, like fingernails. The next morning, I found deep scratch marks across the door. 4 perfect lines, like someone had dragged metal claws down it. I left that day without even telling Carl. The whole ride back, I kept checking my rearview mirror. I couldn't shake the feeling that something followed me. A few months later, I booked an Airbnb for a weekend in Maine. I'd gotten over the breakup, was seeing someone new, and we wanted a peaceful weekend away from the city. This place was completely different, super modern, minimalistic, and right on the coast. Floor-to-ceiling windows, private beach access, the whole deal. We got there late Friday night, around 9 p.m. The host had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Welcome. Please do not move the mirrors. Thank you." That was it. We laughed about it at first. The mirrors? There were several of them. Old-fashioned standing mirrors, one in every room. Not modern at all. Some even had those black ornate frames that looked like they belonged in a haunted house. I thought maybe they were antiques or something. The first night, we heard what sounded like footsteps upstairs. The thing is, the upstairs was locked off, completely closed to guests. There was a chain across the stairwell and a sign that said private. My girlfriend thought it was just the house settling, but I wasn't so sure. The steps were slow and deliberate, like someone was pacing, back and forth. Around 2 a.m., one of the mirrors in the hallway tipped over. We both jumped awake to this crashing sound. When we got there, it wasn't broken. It had just fallen face down. Now, those mirrors were heavy. They weren't the kind of thing to tip on their own. The windows were shut, no breeze. I set it upright again and noticed something that still gives me chills. There were smudges on the inside of the glass. Not outside, like handprints, but they were faint, small, like a child's. We didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I asked the host about the mirrors. She just replied, "They belong to the house. They've always been here." That second night, the pacing upstairs got louder, closer. I swear I heard someone breathing at the top of the stairs. But when I looked, no one was there. Around 4 a.m., one of the bedroom mirrors cracked on its own. A thin line just split across the glass. We left that morning. I don't know what was in that house, or what the mirrors were hiding, but it didn't want us there. The last one still haunts me. That's why I haven't used Airbnb since. Last fall, I booked a stay in Northern California, near the Redwoods. I was doing a solo photography trip and needed a base camp. This one was a small guest house behind someone's main home, separated by trees and a little gravel path. The listing said secluded but safe. The host, Nina, met me when I arrived. She seemed nice, maybe in her 40s. A little distant, but polite. She walked me to the guest house, showed me the lock, told me there was no cell service, but they had Wi-Fi. Before leaving, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you hear knocking, don't answer, even if it sounds like me." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her face didn't change. That night was peaceful. I edited some photos, made tea, and watched Netflix. Around 11:30 p.m., I heard it knocking. It was soft at first, then louder. 3 knocks, then silence. I looked through the peephole. No one. But as I backed away, I heard a voice. A woman's voice. "Hey, it's me. Nina. I forgot to tell you something." I stopped in my tracks. Something felt off. Her voice was just slightly wrong. Like she was mimicking Nina, but couldn't quite get the tone right. Then she said it again. "Can you open up?" "I promise it's quick." The voice changed. It dropped all pretense. "You're no fun." That's when the doorknob started turning. Slowly, quietly, like someone trying not to be heard. I sat there on the floor, holding my breath, watching the handle twitch. Then it stopped. The next morning, I found the front doormat flipped over and tiny pebbles arranged into a circle just outside the door. I packed up and left without saying a word. As I was pulling out, Nina stepped onto her porch. She didn't wave, just watched me. Later that week, I checked the listing again. It was gone, completely removed, like it never existed. I still book hotels now, even if they're more expensive. Airbnbs are just too unpredictable. You never really know whose house you're staying in, or what else might be living there. The second day in that Colorado cabin, things started to feel off. Not terrifying, not yet. Just strange in a way I couldn't explain. I kept hearing these little creaks from the ceiling, like footsteps above me. But it was a one-floor cabin. There was no upstairs. I figured it might have been a raccoon on the roof, or maybe some wind shifting the beams. That's what I told myself anyway. When I went outside to check the roofline, I didn't see any damage or animals. What I did notice, though, was something weird at the tree line. About 30 feet into the woods, there was a dark shape, like someone standing there. But the trees were dense and the sun was behind them, so it was hard to tell if it was just a trick of the light. I squinted at it for a few seconds, then it was gone. No rustling, no movement, just gone. Inside, I found one of my socks in the kitchen. I definitely hadn't taken my socks off in there. It was laid out on the counter, neatly folded, like someone placed it there on purpose. That's when I started feeling that crawling sensation. You know when you just know someone's watching you, even if you can't prove it? That feeling followed me all afternoon. That night, I couldn't shake the sense that something was just outside. The windows didn't have curtains, just clear panes looking out into the black forest. Every time I passed by one, I caught myself glancing out, expecting to see a face. There was never anything there, but I felt like there had been. Like I was just a few seconds too late. I told myself I was being paranoid. City brain, overreacting to nature. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. Something was off about this place. Like it didn't want me there. Or worse, like it did. That third night is when it really started to spiral. I stayed up late editing photos on my laptop, trying to distract myself from the weird feelings I'd had all day. The wind had picked up again, this constant low howl pushing through the trees, like something breathing heavy just outside the walls. Around midnight, I heard a soft tapping sound on the front window. Not knocking, tapping. Like someone gently drumming their fingernails on the glass. I froze, staring at the dark reflection in the screen of my laptop. The tapping stopped. I got up slowly and crept toward the window, trying not to make any sound. When I looked, there was nothing there, just the trees swaying in the wind. But when I turned back toward the living room, I saw it, a handprint, on the inside of the glass. It was faint, smudged, like someone with greasy fingers had pressed their palm flat against the window. My stomach dropped. I didn't touch that window. I hadn't even been near it. I started checking all the doors and windows, every latch, every lock. They were still shut tight. That handprint shouldn't have been possible. Trying to stay calm, I turned on every light in the cabin and sat down with a kitchen knife next to me. I wasn't taking chances, but around 2 a.m., just as I was starting to feel a little more in control, I heard it. Footsteps. Outside. Not animals. Slow, heavy, deliberate steps crunching through the snow. They circled the cabin, first on the side, then around the back. I killed the lights, heart pounding. I crawled to the window and peeked through the blinds. At first, I didn't see anything. But then, just between two trees, I caught a glimpse of something, or someone, standing still. They were facing the cabin, just standing there. I couldn't make out their faces, but I swear they were watching me. I shut the blinds, backed away, and locked myself in the bathroom for the rest of the night. The scariest part? When the sun finally rose and I stepped outside, I found one single barefoot footprint in the snow, right outside the front door. No other prints around it, just one, like whoever, or whatever, had been out there, didn't walk away. That night, the fourth night, was the worst. I barely slept after the barefoot footprint, and I seriously considered just packing up and driving home. But something in me didn't want to look paranoid. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it, letting my imagination get the best of me. Big mistake. Around 11:45 p.m., just as I was about to turn in, every single light in the cabin shut off. Not flickered, just gone. Dead silence followed, not even the wind. I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal, and for some reason, the flashlight wouldn't turn on. It kept glitching, flickering out every time I tried to tap it. That's when I heard the front door handle jiggle. Not once, not casually, over and over again, like someone was trying to open it, fast, desperate, but quiet. I tiptoed toward the door, heart hammering, and peeked through the peephole. There was a figure standing there, not moving, just standing, right in front of the door, maybe a foot away. I couldn't see a face, just the outline of a person. No coat, no hat, bare arms in freezing weather. Then the knocking started, not with a fist, with fingernails. Light, slow scratching along the wood. I backed away, whispering to myself to stay calm. I grabbed the knife again and locked myself in the bedroom. I pushed a dresser in front of the door and sat on the floor, knife in one hand, phone in the other. That's when I heard the window creak open. The bedroom window had opened a crack. I hadn't touched it since I got there. I bolted up, slammed it shut, and locked it. Just before it latched, I saw a hand reaching up toward the sill. I screamed. The hand disappeared. I stayed there the rest of the night, armed and shaking. By morning, the power was back. The lights were on. The door is untouched. No footprints this time, but the window had smudges on the outside, 5 clear fingerprints. And they weren't mine. I left that morning without packing properly. Threw everything into my bag. Didn't even check under the bed. I didn't care. I just wanted to get out. I drove for over an hour before I got a signal again. Called my sister. Told her I was fine, but I could hear my voice shaking. I never reported it. What would I even say? Someone knocked on my door and disappeared? The footprint, the handprints, they'd be long gone by the time anyone got there. I looked up the listing later that week. It was gone. Just vanished from the site. No reviews, no trace of Carl, no listing history. Like it never existed. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that tapping sound in my dreams. Soft, rhythmic, like nails on wood. And every winter since, around the same time of year, I'll wake up and find my bedroom window slightly cracked. Just a sliver. I live on the 3rd floor now. No trees nearby, no balconies, but somehow that window always opens from the outside. I was 23 when I booked an Airbnb in upstate New York for a weekend alone. I had just graduated college and landed my first job, and I wanted a break before I started working full-time. I found this quiet little house nestled in a wooded area outside a town called Saranac Lake. It looked peaceful, just me, a couple books, and no responsibilities for a few days. The place was small but cozy, A-frame style, wood interior fireplace, and huge glass windows that looked out into a thick wall of trees. There were no close neighbors, which I liked. The host's name was Mary Ann. She wasn't staying on the property but left me a detailed note, along with a phone number in case of emergencies. The first night went by fine. I cooked some pasta, watched some dumb TV on my laptop, and fell asleep to the sound of crickets. But even then, I felt unsettled, like the house was too quiet, like I was waiting for some sound to break the silence, something unnatural. And right before I drifted off, I could have sworn I heard a knock on the window. The next morning, I wrote it off as a dream. I mean, who knocks on a window out in the middle of nowhere, right? But when I stepped outside to get some air, I noticed something weird. There were boot prints in the dirt path leading around the house. Not mine. Mine were smaller, and I hadn't even gone around back yet. These prints were wide, deep, and fresh. That day, I tried to brush it off. I read for hours, made some coffee, and walked a short trail Mary Ann had mentioned in her welcome binder. But when I got back, the front door cracked open. Now I know I locked it. I always double-check. I stood in the doorway for what felt like forever, just listening. No sound inside. Nothing seemed missing or moved. But the TV was on. I hadn't touched it that day. That night, I kept all the lights on. I moved a chair under the doorknob, like I'd seen in movies. I even placed a glass bottle on the windowsill, thinking it might fall if someone tried to open it. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not outside, inside. Slow, steady, moving across the wooden floor, directly above my room. The house didn't have an upstairs. I sat there in bed, frozen, staring at the ceiling like I could somehow see through it. The footsteps didn't stop. They paced slowly from one side of the room to the other, then paused, right above me. And then, something I still can't explain happened. Dust, just a little, fell from the ceiling, like someone was standing right there. I grabbed my phone and tried to call Mary Ann, but it wouldn't go through. No signal. I texted her anyway. "Is there an attic?" I waited. No reply. The footsteps eventually stopped. I waited another hour before I dared to move. I opened the door slowly and checked the house. Everything looked normal. But when I stepped into the hallway, I felt this drop in temperature. It was freezing, even colder than outside. And on the far wall, someone had drawn something. 3 long lines, vertical, side by side, scratched into the wood, like claws. I barely slept that night, and the next morning, I planned to leave. But as I packed, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The chair I'd placed under the doorknob, it was moving, slightly to the side, and the glass bottle, on the floor, unbroken, like someone had caught it before it hit. I drove straight to a diner in town and waited there for hours before texting Mary Ann again. She finally replied, "I'm sorry. The house isn't supposed to be rented anymore." When I asked what she meant, she said, "I thought I'd pulled the listing. My brother, he died in that house 2 years ago. We used to hear him walking around at night, even after." I didn't respond. I just stared at the screen for a long time. I never told anyone what happened in that cabin. I finished my coffee, drove home, and never went back. But sometimes, I'll wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of creaking wood. And I live in an apartment, concrete floors. No upstairs. No reason at all to hear footsteps above me. That first full day in the house, nothing too dramatic happened. Just enough little things to keep me on edge. I woke up around 7 a.m. and noticed the front door was unlocked. I knew I'd locked it. I even remembered checking it twice before bed. But now, it was just hanging slightly open, like someone had pulled it gently and left it ajar. I told myself it was probably old hardware or the wind pushing against a loose latch. Still, I double-checked every door and window after that. I even stacked my backpack in front of the door when I went to shower, just to be safe. While I was making breakfast, I kept getting this feeling, like someone was behind me. I turned around a few times, expecting to catch a glimpse of someone through the glass windows. But there was never anything there. Just trees. Endless, unmoving trees. But it felt like they were watching, like the whole forest had eyes. Later in the afternoon, I went for that trail walk. It wasn't long, maybe 15 minutes down and back. But when I returned, I immediately sensed something was wrong. My coffee mug, which I'd left on the kitchen counter, was now on the floor upright. Not spilled, just moved, like someone had carefully set it down. And I heard something upstairs. Only there wasn't an upstairs. It sounded like faint shuffling or dragging. I stood completely still, holding my breath, listening. It stopped the moment I focused on it. I even started to wonder if there was some attic I hadn't noticed. I searched the hallway and ceiling for a pull cord or ladder. Nothing. Just smooth wooden. Maybe someone else was in the house, or had been. I tried to ignore it, told myself it was just nerves, being alone in an unfamiliar place. But that night, as I lay in bed, the shuffling came back, louder, heavier, and this time it didn't stop. It started around 1 a.m., the exact same dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across the floor above me. But the house was one level. There was no upstairs. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, and just listened. The sound moved from one side of the ceiling to the other, slow and steady, and then it stopped. That silence was worse than the noise. I waited, barely breathing, straining to hear anything else. A minute later, I heard something else, more subtle this time. A low whisper. Not words, just the tone, like someone muttering to themselves in another room. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. It finally worked. I stepped out into the hallway, and the temperature dropped instantly. I mean freezing cold. My breath fogged in front of me, and it was August. I checked every room. The bathroom, the kitchen, the living area. Empty. No windows open. No air conditioning on. But that cold didn't leave. It followed me. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen earlier. Above the hallway, in the wooden ceiling, was a faint rectangular outline. Not obvious, but there. Like a trapdoor. There was an attic. I stared at it, heart thudding, not daring to blink. Then thud. A loud, unmistakable thump directly from the attic. I backed up slowly, still looking up, and that's when dust dropped from the seams again. I bolted into the bedroom and locked the door. I pushed the dresser in front of it and sat on the floor with my phone, shaking. That's when the doorknob turned. Softly, deliberately. It jiggled once, then stopped. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, knife from the kitchen in one hand, phone in the other, watching the shadows stretch across the floor as the moon moved through the sky. And just before sunrise, I heard footsteps, but not overhead this time. Not in the hallway either. They were right outside my bedroom door. Then came the whisper again, closer now. Still not words, just breath, like someone whispering through the door. And then 3 knocks. Slow, precise. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. When the knocking stopped, I waited. Minutes passed. Maybe 10. Maybe 30. I don't even know. I was too frozen to check. Then came the scratching. Soft at first, then deeper. Slow, steady lines dragged across the wood of the door. Not frantic, not animal-like. I was careful, intentional. Like whoever, or whatever, was on the other side wanted me to hear it. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my backpack, shoved open the bedroom window, and climbed out. I didn't care about my stuff. I just wanted to survive the night. The moment I hit the ground, I heard movement inside. Fast footsteps, too fast. I ran toward the car parked in the gravel path. No keys in hand yet, just sprinting. When I turned around, I saw the front door open, but no one stepped out. Just the door, slowly swinging open, like something knew I was leaving and didn't care anymore. Like it had done what it came to do. I fumbled with the keys, got in the car, and locked the doors. I started the engine and floored it, tires skidding on gravel as I flew down that winding forest road. The strangest part? In the rearview mirror, as I rounded the last curve, I saw someone standing at the edge of the woods. Just standing, perfectly still. It was too far to see clearly, but I swear, hand to God, it looked like me. Same hoodie, same stance, just watching me leave. I didn't stop. I didn't look back again. I just drove until I saw streetlights and houses and felt like I was back in the world again. I never went back to that Airbnb. Never even left a review. Some things don't need to be shared with strangers. I stayed at a cheap hotel that night, didn't sleep a minute. I left the TV on just to drown out the silence. The next morning, I reported the incident to Airbnb. Not all the details, just that I didn't feel safe, and the property had unlisted areas I hadn't been informed about. They refunded me, no questions asked. The listing disappeared a few days later. I tried calling the host, Marianne, again, straight to voicemail. I never heard back. Weeks passed, and I started to feel normal again. Life moved on. But sometimes, when everything's quiet, I get that same cold drop in my chest, that sensation that something's watching me. A few months ago, I found something in my backpack while cleaning. A small wooden charm, round, smooth, and carved with 3 vertical lines. I didn't buy it. I don't even know what it is. But I remember that mark, scratched into the hallway wall. I don't know how it got into my bag, but I keep it in a drawer now, locked away. Some nights, I swear I hear footsteps just outside my apartment door, but there's nothing there when I look. At least not yet. A few years ago, I booked an Airbnb with my girlfriend while we were visiting her family in Oregon. We didn't want to stay in her parents' house, mostly because it was small and kind of tense with her stepdad. So we found a place just 20 minutes outside town, a little cottage in the woods. It looked peaceful. It was winter, early January. The photos showed a cozy place with a fireplace, 1 bedroom, and this cool-looking old piano in the corner of the living room. My girlfriend thought it was romantic, and honestly, I did too. The host was a woman named Della. Her listing said she lived nearby, but gave us complete privacy. She messaged us once after we checked in. "Hope you enjoy the silence. The house hasn't had company in a long time." That struck me as a little strange, but I didn't think much of it. The first night, everything seemed fine. Cold but fine. We lit a fire, had wine, and listened to music on my phone. But as we went to bed, I realized the silence out there wasn't peaceful. It was too quiet, like even the wind didn't want to pass through. And before we fell asleep, we heard a single piano note play. We both sat up, completely still. She asked if I had set an alarm or if my phone played sounds. I hadn't. And the piano didn't have anything plugged into it. It was one of those heavy, upright models, clearly older than the house itself. I went to check, figuring maybe the floorboard shifted and somehow caused a key to pop. But when I got close, I noticed 2 things. 1, the lid covering the keys had been lifted. 2, a single red thread was lying across the middle C key. It hadn't been there before. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing faint tapping noises from the living room. Not loud, but persistent. My girlfriend didn't hear most of it, or she convinced herself it was nothing. The next morning, I noticed something that made me sick to my stomach. The red thread, just 1 single piece of it, was now on my pillow. I asked her if she'd touched it or moved it. She swore she hadn't even gone near the piano. We decided to stay out most of that day, drive around town, visit her mom, just to avoid being in the house. But when we came back after dark, the first thing we noticed was that the door was unlocked. We both remembered locking it. Inside, nothing looked stolen, but every light in the house was on, even the little closet light, which we hadn't touched. And on the piano bench, sitting neatly as if placed there for us to find, was a piece of paper, folded once perfectly. Inside, in shaky handwriting, it said, "You brought her back." That was when things started to spiral fast. I told my girlfriend we needed to leave, but she didn't want to drive in the snow that late at night. She said maybe it was a sick joke from the host, and we should just message her. So I did. Della replied in less than a minute. I didn't go inside. "Don't open the door again tonight." That was all. No explanation, no apology, just a warning. I was pacing the kitchen, trying to figure out if we should call the cops or just drive somewhere, when the piano played again. This time, 3 notes. Soft, slow, perfectly spaced. We stood there, staring at it. Then the fire went out. Not gradually, just gone. 1 second it was flickering, the next it was black and cold. And that's when we saw the reflection in the piano's glossy black surface. A face. Not ours. Not either of ours. Just standing in the hallway behind us. When we turned around, nothing was there. But the smell changed. Like burnt hair and cold dirt. We grabbed our bags, didn't even turn off the lights, and ran to the car. The whole drive into town, we didn't speak. We didn't even feel safe until we were in a well-lit parking lot with other people around. We stayed at her parents' after that, awkward or not. The weird part, the next morning, I got another message from Della. She said, "The piano is covered again. I think she's calm now." We never asked what that meant. We didn't want to know. A few months later, I checked the listing out of curiosity. It was still up, but now the piano was gone from the photos. I mentioned it to my girlfriend. She just shook her head and said, "No, it's still there. I saw it in the mirror." And honestly, I believe her. Some nights, when the apartment is quiet, I still hear 3 soft notes. Middle C, G, E. And I don't even own a piano. The day after that first piano note, things got uneasy. It wasn't anything huge at first, just little things that felt off. While my girlfriend was showering, I heard faint creaking in the hallway, like someone shifting their weight slowly back and forth on the wooden floorboards. When I checked, no one was there. Later, while she was reading by the fireplace, I noticed something strange with the piano. One of the keys, the exact one that had played on its own the night before, was slightly pressed down, just barely, like it was stuck or being held, but nothing was touching it. I pressed it gently. It didn't make a sound. Then it suddenly popped up on its own, like something had just let go. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't want to freak her out. That night, we both heard something around 2 a.m. A soft knock, not on the front door, inside the house. It came from the hallway closet. Just one knock, sharp and quick. I got up and walked over, thinking maybe something had fallen inside. When I opened the door, it was empty. Just coats and a small wooden stool inside. But there was a smell, faint, like old perfume and mold. I closed the door quickly. Then, when I turned back toward the living room, I froze. The piano cover was open again. Neither of us had touched it. And on the bench was a small red ribbon, coiled, like someone had left it there deliberately. That night, she had a nightmare. She said a woman was sitting at the foot of the bed, brushing her hair with slow, stiff movements, whispering something over and over again. She couldn't remember the words, but the part that really scared me, she said in the dream, the woman had my face. The third night, I woke up to the sound of humming. It was soft, barely audible, but there was no mistaking it. A woman's voice, low and slow, humming what sounded like a lullaby. It was coming from the living room. I looked over. My girlfriend was asleep beside me, facing the wall. I sat up, holding my breath, and listened harder. The humming continued for maybe 30 seconds, then stopped suddenly, mid-note. I got up and opened the bedroom door, peeking out toward the living room. The fire was out again, even though we had left it burning. The piano bench was pushed out slightly, like someone had just stood up from it. That smell was back, stronger this time. Old perfume, burned hair, and something else sour. I turned the hallway light on, but it flickered and buzzed for a second before cutting out completely. The house was cold. Still, I went back into the bedroom and locked the door. A few minutes later, something knocked again, the piano notes the night before. But this time, it came from the window. We were in the middle of the woods. That window faced the back of the house, where there were no steps, no deck, just dirt and trees. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I pulled the curtain aside just an inch, enough to peek. There was a woman standing there, just outside the glass. Pale skin, dark hair draped over her face, both hands pressed against the window. No coat, no shoes, just standing in the snow, eyes locked on mine through the glass. Then she smiled. Not a normal smile, not angry either. It was like she recognized me, like she'd been waiting. I staggered back and yelled for my girlfriend to wake up. She sat up groggy, and by the time we both looked again, she was gone. No footprints in the snow. Nothing disturbed outside. Just frost slowly crawling across the glass where her breath had fogged it. And on the windowsill inside, another red ribbon, tied in a perfect little bow. It hadn't been there before. We didn't sleep after that. We just lay there, eyes wide, listening to the creaks in the floor, the groans in the walls, and somewhere in the house, the soft clink of a piano, key being pressed again. Around 4 a.m., the piano started playing by itself. Not a full song, just 3 slow, separated notes. Again. CGE. Same exact keys. Same chilling timing. We sat up in bed, staring at the open doorway, and for the first time, I saw my girlfriend truly terrified. She whispered, "We need to go." Now, I grabbed the keys and our bags, and we bolted into the living room. The piano was still ringing faintly. The keys moving slightly like invisible fingers were just finishing a tune. And then we heard the back door creak open. I'd locked every door in that house. I was sure of it. But now, that heavy back door was slowly inching inward like someone had pushed it open just enough to step inside. We didn't wait to find out. I shouted for her to run. We sprinted out the front, barefoot in the snow, not even bothering to grab our coats. As we reached the car, I looked back, just once. There was someone standing inside the living room, behind the piano. She wasn't moving, just staring through the window. She had no eyes, just smooth skin where they should have been. Her mouth, though wide, cracked, was smiling so hard it looked painful. She didn't move. She didn't have to. The engine started on the second try. We pulled out fast, tires skidding on the icy gravel road, hearts pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I glanced at the rearview mirror once more, and the lights in the house flicked off, one by one, until it disappeared into darkness. We didn't stop driving until we hit the gas station on the highway, nearly 40 minutes away. We sat in the car, hands shaking, watching the sun rise behind the trees. I reported the incident to Airbnb, but the listing was gone before I even submitted the form. No contact info, no booking history, nothing. Just erased. My girlfriend won't talk about what happened. She deleted every photo she took on the trip. She won't even say the word piano. But I kept a folded paper from the bench, the one that said, "You brought her back." I don't know what it means. I don't know who she is. But a few weeks ago, I started hearing something in my apartment. At first, it was just faint humming, late at night, from the living room. Then last night, I found something on the floor next to my bed. A small red ribbon, tied in a perfect bow. I don't own anything red, and I don't have a piano, but I swear I heard a single note just before I woke up.